Ever had a Karen chain your driveway and call it compliance? The gate creaked that morning as she locked the only road my grandfather ever built. She waved a paper with a clip art seal. Said the HOA had rights here slam, but the real permit sat in my glove box, notarized and older than her bylaws. The porch light caught her face when I said, "Then we'll let the judge's gavel drop on it." Next week, her association had a new sign, "Property closed by court order." Still, that road opens both ways now. The camera beeped when I stepped off the porch. A woman in a gray suit and a man in an unmarked uniform were looping a chain through my farm gate. Fog hung low, turning the metal silver. "Morning," I said. "You two mind explaining what you're doing?" The woman didn't flinch. "Vanessa Kirkland, representing the HOA board. You're in violation." "Violation of what?" She taped a notice to the post demolish or vacate in 30 days. The seal looked official until I zoomed in pixelated edges clip art tree. The man adjusted his stance. "Officer Finch, we have authority to enforce." I raised my phone. "Badge number." "That won't be necessary," he said. "It is," I said, and the camera blinked red again. "You're closing a county easement. That's my road." Vanessa's tone stayed even. "Community safety. The access road fails compliance." "You don't own compliance," I said, "and you don't own this road." Her smile thinned. 30 days. Cooperate, and this ends quietly. They turned back toward a black sedan, the chain glinting behind them. The fog carried the sound until the gate stopped rattling. Inside, I opened my old red binder labeled Heritage Easement, 1928. The deed smelled of dust and ink. The words still read ingress and egress, in perpetuity. My grandfather built this road before the HOA even existed. Coffee steamed beside the laptop as I scanned the pages. The blue progress bar crawled while outside the chain clanked in the wind. The file name appeared easement.scan.pdf. I saved it twice. Mrs. Brennan's truck slowed near the mailbox line. I stepped out with the notice in hand. "They hit you too?" I asked. She leaned from the window. "That seal's wrong. They tried it on me last year. My son checked no record of that HOA anywhere." "Thanks," I said. "I'll make sure the county hears it from me." She drove off. The morning smelled of wet soil and rust. I snapped more photos, notice padlock plate number. By 8:30, the kitchen table was an evidence board binder, open phone charging legal pad split into 4 columns. Claim, evidence, source, next step. Claim, HOA, authority over parcel. Evidence none in county registry. Next step, obtain certified deed. Claim road unsafe. Evidence single notice no citation. Next step, schedule. County inspection. The phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Hollister," a clipped voice asked. "Speaking. This is a courtesy call from the HOA. Non-compliance will trigger penalties. We'd prefer cooperation." "Email me your bylaws and registration," I said. "We've already posted notice. I saw it. The seal's fake and Garamond isn't a legal font." Silence. Then, "You sound like a lawyer." "I'm a carpenter's grandson," I said, "and I keep receipts." I hung up, saving the call log to my folder, Road Closure, Day 01. The clock ticked loud in the kitchen. Each second felt like another foot of chain. I drove into town. The county building rose from the morning haze, flag snapping above brick. Inside, the recorder clerk peered over her glasses. Pulling records, she asked. "Deed and easement on the Hollister parcel," I said, "and a certification that no HOA is registered for our tract." She typed. The keys clicked like a small engine. 15 minutes later, a thunk of her stamp echoed across the counter. The ink circle spread crisp and dark, certified. "Here you go," she said. "Official copy. We can notarize the no HOA statement, too. Please do." She pressed another seal, second thunk. Real ink, real authority. I held the document beside the fake notice and almost laughed. Side by side, the truth looked brighter. Back home, the road waited behind its chain. I took one more shot, real seal versus fake seal. The chain caught sunlight like a wire under tension. The phone buzzed again, new text. Walk away from the road. No signature, no punctuation. I saved the message and wrote under next step document intimidation attempts. Then I poured fresh coffee and watched the red gate through the kitchen window. The notice flapped once sharp against the glass. I called Emma, an old friend from the local paper. "You still keep a reporter's notebook?" I asked. "Always," she said. "Why, they chained my farm road. Want me to come out tomorrow? I'm still building the record." She chuckled. "Send me what you have." I sent the photo scans and audio file. 1 minute later, her reply pinged. "That HOA seal is clip art. Garamond, too." I smiled. Paper lies, records don't. Outside, the wind moved through the oaks. I lifted the camera for one last frame, the padlock, the chain, the notice shaking in the breeze. I didn't raise my voice, I said quietly. I raised my file. The camera beeped again, confirming the shot. The fog had lifted and the gravel road stretched ahead straight as my grandfather left it. They'd chained it shut, but they hadn't moved it an inch. The diner smelled like bacon and old coffee. Emma slid into the booth across from me and leaned over my mug. "That seal's clip art, Graham," she said, tapping the photo on my phone. "Edges are jagged. And who uses Garamond on a legal notice? People who fake authority," I said. "Thanks for coming early." She flipped open a pocket notebook, the kind with corners bent from use. "Walk me through the road. Easements real." I set the red binder on the formica. Recorded in 1928. Ingress, egress, perpetuity. I thumbed to the ribboned page. My grandfather signed it with the neighbor. They intended this road to stay open. A waitress refreshed the pot. "You want a warm-up, hon, please?" I said. Emma held up her mug, too. Steam rose between us like a signal. Emma snapped a quick shot of the binder. "We do this clean," she said. "Certified copies, side-by-sides. People believe paper when it's stamped." "Paper lies," I said, sliding a 20 under the sugar caddy records don't. She smiled. "That's your quote for later." We drove 2 blocks to the recorder's office, the kind of municipal building that still kept a squeaky handrail. Fluorescent lights hummed. File drawers lined the wall like teeth. The clerk from yesterday peered over her glasses. "Back again?" she asked. "Back for the good ink," I said, lifting the binder. "I need certified copies of the deed and the easement and a notarized statement that no HOA is registered for our block." She typed keys, clacking steady. Emma filmed her hands, no faces, just the motion of regular government work doing what it's meant to do. Mrs. Brennan stepped in behind us carrying a manila envelope and the calm of someone who's seen plenty. "You tell him," she asked Emma Chin, dipping toward me. "I told him the seal's fake," Emma said. Mrs. Brennan touched my sleeve. "Vanessa came to my door 2 years back, said I was in violation. Wanted me to sell. My son checked the county, nothing. She stopped when he said we'd report it." The clerk cleared her throat. "Mr. Hollister." She lifted a stack. "Deed easement certified." She raised the stamp. Thud. The rubber met paper with a final, rounded sound. The seal bled dark and undeniable. We all went still a second, the kind of silent beat that lands like a verdict. The fluorescent hum returned small, but certain. "Can I see the notice you received?" the clerk asked. I handed it over. She eyed the font, the logo, the lack of statute citations. "We don't issue anything that looks like this," she said. "If an HOA exists, it's in our corporate registry and on your parcel record. It isn't." Emma placed the certified page beside the notice and framed them together. Side by side, she murmured, "Let the audience compare without me saying a word." Mrs. Brennan patted my arm. "Your grandfather was proud of that road, you know. Said a straight line was honest work." I swallowed. He measured with string and stakes. Wrote everything down. The clerk slid a second form across the counter. "Per your request, notarized statement, no HOA registered on your block." She pressed another seal. Thud. The page curled at the corners under the fresh ink. Emma nodded toward the post office. "You should mail certified copies to yourself, chain of custody." "Already on the list," I said. We stepped back onto the sidewalk, light diffusing through a thin overcast. Across the street, the bulletin board outside the courthouse carried a flyer for BBQ fundraiser Veterans Hall and the latest council agenda. Ordinary life pinned up and legible. At the post office, the line moved past a rack of flat-rate boxes. An older man in a ball cap counted pennies for stamps. The clerk weighed my envelope like it might tip a scale. "Certified mail?" she asked. "Please. 2 addresses home and my P.O. box. Return receipt." She clicked through options, printed green slips, and slid them forward. "Sign here, here, and on the back of the card." Emma whispered, "We love green cards. Viewers know them. Proof that travels." I signed. She took stills of the slips, nothing else. We stepped aside to fill out the second card on a counter scarred by decades of keys and elbows. Mrs. Brennan studied the line of people all doing small chores that make a town keep time. "They bank on folks being too tired to fight," she said, "or too proud to ask for help." "Not today," I said. We pushed through the glass doors into the cool. A leaf blew past our shoes and caught against the curb. Emma tucked a strand of hair under her cap. "Next, code compliance. If they want to call your road unsafe, schedule the real inspection. Get the county's voice on record." "Already emailed," I said. My phone buzzed. "A new email from Code Enforcement will verify permitted work and roadway condition, attach any relevant documents before Friday." I forwarded the deed and easement with the subject line, "Evidence enclosed." Emma glanced at the courthouse clock. "I've got a noon with my editor. You okay if I cite you as source and leave your address out?" "That's fine," I said. "Use recorded easement and fake HOA notice. Keep it about the documents." "Always," she said. We stopped at the diner again for a late morning refill. The waitress slid our mugs across. "Heard you two were over at the county," she said. "Everything okay?" "Getting there," I said. Emma held up the certified page for a second and then lowered it. "This is how it should work. Most days, it does," the waitress replied. "Most days." I stared at the photo on my phone. Real seal beside fake seal, and thought of the road that ran straight because 2 men had agreed to make it so and sign their names in ink. My thumb hovered over the screen, then I dropped both images into a folder named Comparisons. Graham Emma said, "When we cut this, we won't sermonize. We'll let stamps and dates talk. You know the line I'm using. Paper lies. Records don't," I said, and the words felt less like a slogan than like a hinge swinging open. Mrs. Brennan slid into the booth for a minute. "If you need me to write a statement about Vanessa's visit, I will. I don't like bullies. I'll bring the form by," I said. "Thank you." She patted my hand and left $1 under her saucer. We stepped out again. The cloud cover had lifted just enough to show a blue band over the oaks. Emma headed for her car. "I'll call after I talk to the editor. I'll be home," I said, scanning, backing up, breathing. She laughed. "Do all 3. My phone buzzed the second her door shut. A text from an unknown number lit the screen. "Walk away from the road. No signature, no punctuation. Just the same quiet threat as the chain itself." I saved the message, tagged it Intimidation 01, and added a note. "Retaliation likely, do not engage. Let record speak." I looked across the street at the bulletin board and its plain declarations about trash pickup and PTA bake sales. Where life is posted in daylight, lies squint. I slid the phone into my pocket and felt the edge of the green certified card against my wallet. Paper can say anything. Records say what happened. Minnie Cliff held in the air like an uncut chain. By morning, the neighborhood looked like a movie set after a storm. Flyers fluttered from every mailbox, each one stamped in thick black ink. Unsafe farm access. Road non-compliant owner. The words leaned forward like a shove. I pulled one free. The paper smelled of cheap toner and wet dew. No signature, no office header, just a return address, P.O. Box 217. Emma's voice came from behind me. They hit every house, she said, camera in hand. Same font, same phrasing. "They're widening the lie," I said. She took a photo as another flyer ripped loose and drifted toward the ditch. "We should call Carter. He said he had something." By dusk, folding chairs lined Brennan's driveway. A grill smoked at the edge of the gravel. The small-town BBQ we'd planned as a break had turned into a field meeting. Neighbors came carrying copies of letters and worry. Carter, our private investigator, arrived in his usual windbreaker carrying a manila envelope. "You're going to like this," he said. He held up a printout clipped to a filed slip, its corner cracked and folded. Same P.O. Box number shows up in 3 counties. Different letterheads, same payment trail. I frowned. 3 counties, he nodded. All trace back to something called Kirkland Property Services. Guess who incorporated it? Emma said softly, Vanessa. The grill sizzled and popped, scattering sparks that glowed in the fading light. Conversations stopped. Even the bugs seemed to wait. "That woman's been running fake compliance checks," Carter went on. "She mails out notices under different aliases, cites made-up ordinances, and pressures folks to sell cheap." Brennan's fence letter. Same layout. Mrs. Brennan lifted her chin. "She told me my garden fence violated some setback rule. My son looked it up, no such rule." A retired teacher down the row added, "She sent me 3 letters, then 2 calls. I sold because I got tired of fighting. County says she flipped it 3 months later." Emma's pen scraped fast. "We can build a pattern. If we line up every victim and every address the state will have to look." I spread the cracked filed slip on the table next to the flyers. "We start here. Date sender, return box." Carter slid his phone across. "And a quote for your story. Authority isn't a costume, evidence is." She wore a badge pin once, but no one checked the ID. I felt the anger settle into something colder, steadier. "We're not yelling," I said. "We're recording." The grill hissed again, and for a few seconds all that moved was the smoke drifting through the dusk. Silent beat. Emma looked around the circle. "Okay, if you've gotten letters, write the dates and what they said. Keep envelopes if you have them." One man raised a hand. "Do threats count?" "Especially threats," I said. "They're timestamps of fear." Mrs. Brennan passed out index cards. The sound of pens scratching paper filled the air. Neighbors wrote carefully, names shaking but words straight. The retired teacher slid his card toward me. "I just want it on record," he said. "They made me feel small in my own house." I nodded. "That ends here." Emma filmed the scene quietly. Hands papers the cracked corner of the filed slip. "This is how you rebuild trust," she murmured. "Evidence under a porch light." Carter scrolled through his phone. "Return addresses all use the same routing code. The print jobs came from a copy shop in Glendale. They paid cash every time." "Can we tie the name legally?" I asked. He smiled. "Already did. Corporate records show Vanessa Kirkland as the only manager. Same signature, same date as your fake notice." Brennan exhaled hard. "So, she's the HOA, the company, the whole show. Looks that way," Carter said. The grill flared one last time and went quiet. Neighbors shifted closer together, the smell of smoke and sauce heavy in the air. Someone cracked a soda can, the sound like a gavel in a quiet court. Emma tucked the cracked filed slip into my binder. "Prop number 2, she said. "We keep it safe." I took a slow look around the yard, the folding chairs, the papers weighed by cups, the people who'd stopped being strangers. The dusk had turned to blue-gray. For the first time in weeks, no one looked down when they spoke. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stepped aside and answered. "Hollister, Mr. Hollister." "This is the sheriff's office," a firm voice said. "We're scheduling a public hearing next month on your complaints. You'll be testifying." The line crackled. I steadied my voice. "Under oath?" "Of course. Bring your documentation." I looked at the binder in my hand, the filed slip showing its crack like a scar. "I'll bring the truth," I said. The call ended. Behind me, the group laughed softly at something Brennan said. The flyers rustled against the fence, their lies paling under the porch light. I slid the cracked slip into a plastic sleeve and closed the binder. "They can print lies," I whispered, "but I can file the truth." The night held steady quiet, watchful, ready. The courtroom lights hummed like old bees. Click the projector woke and the first slide settled on the screen. Exhibit C, Road. Easement, recorded 1928, versus HOA, claim unfiled. The title bar glowed a clean county blue. I stood at the lectern with my red binder open and a cracked filed slip tucked in the pocket like a splint. Judge Thorne took her seat at exactly 10:00 a.m. She was spare and calm, the kind of presence that made paper behave. Neighbors filled the back rows. Brennan in her gardening hat, the retired teacher with his hands folded tight. Reporters leaned forward. Emma stood by the aisle camera on a shoulder strap, not recording now, just watching. "Call the matter of Hollister versus Kirkland and Finch," the clerk said, voice ringing against wood. "Appearances?" the judge asked. "Plaintiff self-represented," I said. "For the defense." Vanessa's attorney rose. Vanessa kept her eyes on the table edge. Finch sat beside her in a plain jacket, the false swagger gone. He stared at the floor as if a secret lived there. Judge Thorne glanced at the notice I'd filed with the complaint. She lifted it closer. Her brows tightened by a degree you only notice if you've spent years watching faces for lies. "Counsel the seal on this document," she said. "Who issued it?" "Your Honor." The defense began the association. Which association, she asked. No inflection, just a line cutting straight. He cleared his throat. "Riverside Community Registered where—" The question landed light as paper, heavy as stone. He paused too long. The fans above us stirred the warm air. Silent beat. The projector cast a rectangle of pale over the wall. "Mr. Hollister," she said, "show your papers." I nodded to the bailiff, who dimmed the front row of lights. Slide 1, real versus fake. On the left, the certified easement ink seal, dark and round recorder's stamp, crisp. On the right, Vanessa's notice, pixelated tree Garamond, no statute citation. "Your Honor," I said, "the left image is the recorded easement of ingress and egress for my farm road. The right is the notice taped to my gate. No filing date, no authorizing ordinance, no instrument number. The font and seal don't match county standards." I tapped my clicker. Click. Slide 2, corporate search. No HOA on parcel. The clerk's notarized statement appeared, the seal catching the lens. "Recorder confirms no HOA registered for our block," I said. "I've mailed certified copies to myself and to counsel." I held up the green cards. "Chain of custody." "Audio?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor." The speakers played the exchange from my gate, Vanessa's professional smile in a voice, Finch refusing to provide a badge number. The judge listened without hurry, pen still. When the clip ended, she looked at the defense table. Officer Finch flinched at his name. "Ma'am, were you a sworn officer when you visited Mr. Hollister's property?" A long breath. "No, Your Honor." "Then why say you had enforcement authority?" He stared at his hands. "I was told it would make things smoother." "By whom?" He swallowed. "Ms. Kirkland." Vanessa kept her gaze on that wood grain. A muscle in her cheek worked. Click. Slide 3, mail patterns, P.O., Box 217, across 3 counties. Carter's chart filled the screen. Same box, different shells, all roads pointing to Kirkland Property Services. Return permits, routing codes. Cash, copy, shop payments. I said, "The names change. The mailbox doesn't." The defense tried to find a foothold. "Your Honor, even if there were irregularities, community safety is—" "Safety doesn't excuse forgery," Judge Thorne said, voice flat as glass. "Nor does it grant jurisdiction you don't have." I clicked again. Click. Slide 4, side-by-side road photo versus non-compliance. Claim, a well-crowned gravel lane, culvert's clear edge lines trimmed. Code enforcement emailed this morning, I said, lifting my phone. They're scheduling inspection. Permits on file. I set the phone down face up so the timestamp winked under the bar of the lectern. Emma scribbled a line in her notebook, eyes bright. I felt the cracked, filed slip under my fingertips and remembered the BBQ, the index cards, the voices steadying. "Anything further?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "A statement, if the court permits." She nodded. I kept my voice low. Truth doesn't shout, it files. We brought stamp states and the easement my grandfather signed with our neighbor a century ago. We ask for an injunction to stop interference with that road and a referral on fraudulent notices." The fans hummed. The room held its breath. Then the judge lifted her gavel and set it down once exact. "Injunction granted," she said. "Defendants are prohibited from blocking, locking, or otherwise interfering with the recorded easement pending further order. The matter of forged notices is referred to the district attorney." She signed the order. The pen made a small decisive sound. The neighbors behind me exhaled as one. Brennan's hat bobbed. The retired teacher closed his eyes for a beat. Reporters' pens began to scratch. Vanessa finally looked up. For a second, her mouth softened into something like surprise, then set hard again. As the bailiff called the next case, she leaned just close enough for me to hear without seeming to move her lips. "You just closed your own road," she whispered. "Enjoy the quiet." I turned my head slightly. "Court orders open things," I said. "Scams close them." She smiled a blade-thin smile. Finch kept staring at his knuckles. I gathered my exhibits, slid the cracked filed slip into a plastic sleeve, and waited at counsel table while the clerk printed copies. Emma touched my sleeve as we stepped into the hallway. "That quote," she said, "it plays. It's not a line," I said. "It's a habit." She grinned. "All the better." Through the courthouse glass, I could see the bulletin board Council Agenda Veterans BBQ Ordinary Acts posted in daylight. I folded the injunction into the binder. A real seal shone through the plastic. The hum of the courtroom followed me out like a machine winding down, ready for the next case, the next file, the next quiet truth. The morning light caught on something new too clean to belong here. A padlock, bright as chrome, hung from my farm gate. Brand new, not mine. The tag read, "Property of HOA." Same font, same arrogance. Emma's truck rolled up the gravel drive. She leaned out, camera already in hand. "That's not the old lock," she said. "No," I replied, checking the hinge. "This one's a message." Her phone buzzed. She frowned at the screen. Anonymous email. Subject line says Target Next Quarter Farm, Road Lot. I exhaled slow. "They're not done." "Then neither are we," she said. By noon, the Town Hall Bulletin Board wore a new headline, "Community Meeting Road Ownership Rights." Same typeface as Vanessa's old notices, but this time it told the truth. We borrowed the folding chairs from the church basement, strung lights across the rafters, and watched neighbors file in faces I'd seen for years, but never truly known. Brennan came with her old binder of tax receipts, the retired teacher brought coffee in a metal thermos, and Carter from the PI's office leaned against the back wall, scanning quietly. I stood at the front with my red binder, its corners frayed, its filed slip cracked like a scar, and cleared my throat. Tonight, I said, we stop being their targets. Tonight, we build something real. Emma clicked her pen. "A legitimate homeowners association," she said. "Registered, transparent, accountable. Everything the fake one wasn't." Brennan nodded. "We'll need bylaws, real ones. Short, clear, and fair." I flipped the binder open to the draft. "That's exactly what we have." We read them aloud, line by line. Membership rules, quorum, maintenance, dispute resolution. Every so often, paper rustled a gentle punctuation between truths. Mrs. Brennan raised her hand. "Add a rule about notice periods. 7 days minimum before any vote." "Done," I said, writing it in the margin. The retired teacher added, "Make meetings public." Always, Emma said, "No secrets, no locked boxes." A quiet fell across the room, the kind that means agreement, not exhaustion. I looked around at them all and said, "We don't need louder rules. We need clearer ones." That earned real applause, the kind that starts cautious but ends steady. Carter passed around signature sheets. 22 owners, he said. "That's what the county needs to charter it." Pens began clicking. One by one, names filled the lines, Brennan first, then the teacher, then the couple who'd once believed Vanessa's flyers. Each signature sounded like a small door closing on fear. When the last line filled, I slid the papers into my binder beside the cracked slip. The prop was changing again, old evidence beside new creation. "Let's file it," I said. tonight. The clerk's office smelled faintly of paper dust and printer ink. The same clerk looked up from her desk, surprised but smiling. "Back so soon, with something new," I said, setting the binder on the counter. "Bylaws, signatures, the real association." She scanned the pages line by line. "Transparent Voting Community Maintenance Fund Open Records." She nodded. "This is how it's supposed to look." She reached for her seal. "Effective immediately," she said. The stamp came down hard. The sound echoed through the tiled lobby firm final clean. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Brennan clapped softly, and the rest followed. Emma's camera caught the moment a circle of people standing straighter under fluorescent light, a seal drying at the center of their work. Outside, the town square glowed with strings of light. The air smelled like summer grass barbecue smoke, the faint sweetness of victory. Emma pinned a fresh copy of our registration on the bulletin board right beside one of Vanessa's faded flyers. The two papers fluttered together for a moment before hers tore slightly at the edge. I got home late. The kitchen light cast a soft cone over the table. The binder sat there heavier now, filled with names and purpose. Then came the whisper of movement at the door, a soft scrape. An envelope slid across the floor. It was thick pale and stamped Kirkland Property Services. Inside, one page. Cease and desist. Unauthorized use of HOA title. No signature, no seal, just the ghost of authority pretending to still exist. I laid it beside the new stamped bylaws, the fresh seal gleaming gold under lamplight. "You can print another threat," I murmured, but this time I filed first. Outside, the night was still. The padlock on the gate caught a sliver of moonlight and looked smaller than it had that morning, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel locked out. I felt like the one holding the key. 13 victims, 3 counties, Carter said, and dropped a swollen folder onto my workbench. It hit wood with a slap that made the socket set rattle. Coffee steamed beside us. The box fan hummed in the corner, pushing warm air over paper. My garage smelled like oil and cardstock, my war desk lit by a clamp lamp and resolve. I flipped the cover. Tabs labeled like ribs. Victims, shell companies, P.O. Box, 217. Phone, spoofs, financial trail. On top lay his PI report logo, small substance heavy. Photos of envelopes, bulk mail permits. The cracked filed slip we'd adopted as a marker lived in its own sleeve. Names I asked. Carter tapped the list. Brennan, the retired teacher, 2 couples on Birch 3 widows in the next county, and 7 more with matching mailers. Losses from under duress sales, conservative estimate $1.4 million. I let the number sit between us. "You sure on the links? Return routes, print shop logs, box rental records, and the same compliance script," he said. Different masks, same mouth. My phone buzzed on the bench. An email preview slid across the screen. DA Liaison preliminary review complete. "If half this sticks, it's criminal." I read it aloud. Carter gave a short, satisfied breath. "There's your foreshadow," he said. Emma stepped in from the side door camera bag over her shoulder. "Tell me you have visuals that explain themselves," she said, dropping onto the stool. She reached for the projector's power switch. Whir. The bulb came up slowly, white cone dusted with particles. The sound threaded the room like a wire. We fed Carter's charts to the screen, 3 counties, 1 box, alias after alias. The fan and projector sang a low duet. Silent beat. Finch Emma asked. Carter pulled a thinner folder. He flipped, he said. "Through counsel. Statement says Vanessa hired him off the books provided the uniform told him to use officer because it moved people along. He'll testify to impersonation and the script." I stared at the bullet points. The air in the garage felt heavier, and her lawyer Emma answered before Carter could. "He sent me a letter full of thunder and no rain defamation threats if we publish. I ran it by my editor and the paper's attorney. We're good. Your documents sing lead." I smiled without humor. "Corruption fears daylight more than prison," I said. Emma made a small notch with her pen. "That's going in. We built a timeline on butcher paper taping prints edge to edge across the pegboard, the chain on my gate, the fake seal, the county's clean stamp, the flyers, the BBQ, the judge's injunction, the bylaws drying under fluorescent light. Each beat got its place, each document its hook. The inbox chimed again. DA notice, final hearing. All media welcome. The subject line looked like a clean cut. I opened it. The body was short date courtroom time. Witnesses Hollister, Brennan, Finch. Exhibits as lodged. Public seating available. I printed 2 copies and set one upright against a wrench so the heading stood like a little sign. Emma exhaled. They invited cameras. They invited sunlight, I said. Carter checked his watch. I'll get sworn statements from the last 3 victims by Friday. 2 of them have out-of-state kids who can bring bank docs. It'll round the trail. A soft knock on the open garage door. The DA liaison Caldwell stood in a navy windbreaker with a folder tucked under his arm. He had the tired calm of someone who reads things for a living and prefers them short. "Mr. Hollister," he said, stepping in, "I'm your point until hearing. Your filings are neat. Keep them that way. They're all indexed," I said, handing him a copy of the binder's table of contents. Audio in this flash drive, certified copies in the red tabs, green cards behind the receipts. He flipped a few pages, nodded. "We pulled your code enforcement inspection. We'll have the county engineer available as a witness. As for the defamation letter from opposing counsel, save it. It helps show a pattern pressure without basis." Emma watched him weighing angles she wouldn't shoot. "You think this goes criminal?" she asked. He considered his words. "If half this sticks, it's criminal." He set the folder down. "Judge Thorne's chambers have requested pre-marked exhibits. She prefers order to surprise." I pictured her eyebrows tightening over that fake seal. "Order suits me," I said. Carter tapped the PI report. "Anything else you need before we package all this?" "2 things," Caldwell said. A single-page timeline the jury could follow with one finger, and he held up a hand, "No speeches. Let the record speak." I nodded. "Truth doesn't shout at files." He smiled almost. "You'll do fine." He took a step toward the door, then turned back. "By the way, Mr. Finch has asked for transport through a side entrance. He's had tires slashed this week. We'll handle security." He paused. "But he's coming." When Caldwell left, the garage felt like a stage after rehearsal, taped marks on the floor script, ready lights warming. Emma switched slides, Exhibit K side by side, real seal versus fake seal. The projector's whine rose a half-tone and settled. "You realize what this means tomorrow," she said. "What?" She tilted her head toward the DA notice. "Someone will say it out loud. Finally, someone fought back." It won't be a caption. It'll be a fact. I ran a hand over the binder's worn spine. The cracked filed slip peeked from its sleeve like an old bruise you no longer hide. On the bench, the DA's final hearing notice gleamed under the clamp lamp. I slid it into a fresh plastic cover the way you do with things you can't afford to wrinkle. Carter gathered his copies. "I'll be in the gallery," he said. "If the defense tries to hand-wave the P.O. box, I'll have rental receipts and a manager affidavit in my jacket." "Good," I said. Emma shouldered her bag. "I'll file the story stub with placeholders. We publish after the gavel. Not before." "Thanks," I said. They left me with the hum. The fan pushed the same warm air. The projector cast its rectangle against pegboard and wrench shadows. The coffee had gone the temperature of resolve. I picked up a Sharpie and wrote across the top of the butcher paper timeline, "Open road. Open record." For a moment I imagined Judge Thorne at her desk, the green-shaded lamp, the quiet of chambers, her pen steady as she drafted orders that would force light into corners. My computer chimed another email arriving on cue. The sound bounced off the metal shelves and felt larger than it should, louder than any applause. I didn't open it yet. I let the tone hang in the garage, pure and ringing like the start bell for a match where rules finally matter. Then I did what I always do. I filed. The words on the courtroom screen glowed in sharp white authority. Closed. It was just a header, a preloaded title for the judgment, but the phrase seemed to hang over the room like a verdict already spoken. Judge Thorne entered with her usual deliberate calm black robe brushing the polished wood as she took her seat. Court is now in session. Her gavel tapped once, not the crash of finality but a measured note like a conductor's cue. The gallery was full, reporters, neighbors, even the retirees who once avoided conflict now leaning forward on the benches. Cameras hummed softly. Notepads rustled like distant rain. The county seal above the bench glimmered in the light of the projector. The district attorney rose first, holding up a color chart. Your Honor, this shows the restitution plan for affected property owners' 13 victims across 3 counties. The pattern is consistent. The mailings, the seals, the post office box, they all trace back to one origin. Vanessa Kirkland sat at the defense table, chin-lifted expression carved from something between pride and disbelief. Her attorney whispered, eyes darting between the monitors and the jury box. Call Garrett Finch, the clerk announced. Finch approached the stand slowly, his shoes clicking like tiny metronomes. The bailiff held out the oath card. Finch's hand trembled as he swore to tell the truth. When he sat down, the microphone caught the faint hitch of his breath. Mr. Finch, the DA began, Who hired you to perform compliance checks? Vanessa Kirkland, he said, voice small but steady. She paid me cash, no contract, told me to wear a uniform and say I was with the association. Were you? He shook his head. No, sir, I was just following orders. The DA nodded, pacing once before the projector. Did she instruct you to use this emblem? He clicked to Exhibit D, the fake HOA seal, the same one that had hung on my gate. The courtroom lights dimmed, focusing every pair of eyes on the evidence. Yes, Finch said. She said people wouldn't question it. Told me, authority is 90% appearance. Emma's pencil froze mid-line. The crowd murmured until Judge Thorne raised her hand. Order, she said. The next slide showed Vanessa's emails, subject lines like Target next quarter, Farm, Road Lot, and Clip Art. Seal, okay. People don't look close. Her name glared at the top of each thread. Ms. Kirkland, the DA, said, Do you deny authoring these messages? Her attorney stood. Objection, no verification of server logs. The judge waved the paper lightly. Already stipulated by both parties last hearing. Overruled. Vanessa leaned toward the mic. Those were drafts, she said. Not directives. But her voice cracked on the last word. The DA turned to the bench. Your Honor, the state rests. A low hum filled the courtroom. The sound of projectors, cooling cameras, resetting the kind of hush that comes before an announcement changes everything. Judge Thorne folded her hands. This court has reviewed exhibits, testimony, and filings. The question before me is whether the so-called association exercised any lawful authority. She looked over her glasses. It did not. She nodded to the clerk. Please display the order. The projector flickered, then showed the text in bold county lettering. Order, the association property is hereby closed and returned to county custody. The next lines detailed restitution, the nullification of past claims, and the immediate suspension of all operations tied to Kirkland Property Services. The gavel struck once sharp, final echoing like a gunshot through conscience. The room gasped. Someone clapped once before stopping themselves. Brennan wiped her eyes with a tissue that disintegrated halfway. I didn't move. I just watched the words burn into permanence on the screen. Judge Thorne looked toward Vanessa. You weaponized paperwork and fear, she said quietly. That ends today. Mr. Finch, your cooperation is noted. Ms. Kirkland, you'll have your chance to answer these findings in the next proceeding. The DA gathered his files, standing straighter than before. For the record, he said criminal prosecution begins next week. That line rolled through the courtroom like thunder, finding its echo. Outside, the courthouse steps had turned into a press gauntlet. Cameras, flashed microphones appeared like weeds after rain. Emma stayed behind me, notebook at the ready. A reporter leaned close. Mr. Hollister, do you have a statement for the record? I held up the stamped order, the judge's seal still damp under the sun. You closed our road, I said. The court closed your playbook. For a second, even the cameras went still. Then, questions erupted, voices tumbling over one another. But I was already walking down the marble steps toward the square where the Real Association's notice still hung on the bulletin board. Mrs. Brennan caught up to me and pressed something cool into my hand. A small brass key, old, familiar, polished by time. "You left it on my porch," she said. "Thought you might want it back. The key to my gate. Prop number 3. The loop complete." I turned it over, once the sunlight glancing off its worn grooves. "Thank you," I said. "Keep it," she replied. "You earned it." At the curb, Emma raised her camera. "One last shot," she said. "Hold the key up. It's a better ending than a quote." So I did. The courthouse doors closed behind us, and for the first time in a long time the air didn't feel like evidence. It felt like freedom. The echo of the gavel still lingered somewhere behind my ribs, steady as a heartbeat. Justice hadn't shouted. It had simply filed. Morning light poured through the oak line, washing the gravel road in gold. The air was clean, almost ceremonial. I slipped the brass key into the gate's new lock and turned it. Click. It moved easily, no tension, no resistance. The chain fell away soft as a sigh. At the mailbox, I found it crammed with envelopes, handwritten notes, a folded newspaper clipping, and a copy of Judge Thorne's order, the seal crisp against the paper. One letter said simply, "Thank you for standing up when we didn't know how." I tucked them into my red binder, the same one that once held fear, then facts, then the law itself. By noon, smoke from the community BBQ drifted across the reopened road. Folding tables lined the fence. Someone had hung string lights between the oaks. Their bulbs winked in the daylight like quiet applause. The old private access, violation subject to fine sign lay face down in the grass, replaced by a new one that read, "Property closed by court order." Beside it leaned my wooden sign, paint faded, but still clear. Road open. Neighbors arrived with covered dishes and tired smiles. Brennan brought lemonade. The retired teacher carried a tray of cornbread. Children wove between the legs of chairs, their bikes scattering dust into sunlight. The sound of cicadas pressed steady in the background, a kind of rhythm that belonged to peace. Emma adjusted her camera. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. "Let's make it official." She raised the lens. I lifted the sign. For a moment, everything went still. The breeze, the chatter, even the smell of smoke. I fixed the sign back onto its post beside the court placard, tightened the last screw until wood and metal touched. Click. The crowd exhaled. Applause swelled like a slow wave. Brennan dabbed her eyes and laughed at herself for doing it. A kid rang his bicycle bell twice, sharp and bright. Emma lowered her camera and grinned. "That's your final shot," she said. I wiped my hands on my jeans. "No," I said, glancing toward the bulletin board we'd built last month. "One more." The framed court order hung there now, the county seal catching a shard of light. Around it were thank you notes from every direction, handwriting slanted, uneven, honest. I added one more, the judge's printed line from the final order underlined in red. "The association property is hereby closed and returned to county custody." Brennan stepped up beside me. "You think they'll learn from it?" she asked. I looked at the kids circling the gate, their laughter bouncing off the trees. "They don't have to," I said. We did. The cicadas buzzed louder, then fell quiet for half a beat. A bird skimmed low across the road, wings flashing white. Emma caught the moment on camera, the shutter's beep slicing through the air like punctuation. The DA had sent a letter that morning, short formal restitution schedule confirmed. Criminal proceedings ongoing. It sat folded in my pocket, but I didn't need to read it. Justice had already arrived, stamped and filed. Carter stopped by the fence, hand raised in salute. "Heard they're citing your case in 2 counties already," he said. "Good," I told him. "Maybe it'll save someone a year of letters." He smiled. "You realize you're a precedent now." I shook my head. "Just a guy who read the fine print." The brass key glinted on my ring, warm from the sun. I ran a thumb over its edge and let the memory unspool the day the lock first snapped shut, the silence that followed the weight of being right but powerless. That weight was gone now, replaced by something quieter, earned relief. Emma wandered over with her camera slung low. "Want the caption?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. She typed, then read it aloud, her voice steady. "Finally, someone fought back lawfully." "That'll do," I said. As dusk gathered, the string lights flickered on, one by one, small suns reclaiming the night. Plates clinked, voices softened, and laughter floated out over the fields. The gate stayed open, not defiant, just free. I stood by the post a while longer, binder under my arm, the sign steady in the breeze. The law hadn't made us perfect. It had just made us equal again, and sometimes that's enough. The cicadas started up once more, steady and endless, and the air filled with the kind of quiet that only comes after a long fight, the sound of everything still standing. "Road's open," I said softly. Brennan smiled beside me, and this time it stays that way. The brass key felt warm in my hand as the new seal caught the sun. The court's order hung on the gate like a promise written in steel, and neighbors stood close reading each word aloud as if reclaiming their own names. What began as anger ended as order, the kind made by patience, proof, and paper that didn't lie. I realized healing isn't forgetting. It's filing what's right where it belongs. Justice isn't loud. It's steady. Finally, someone fought back lawfully. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.